Just let me know when. Perfect. How's everybody doing today? Enjoy the conference? Hopefully. Perfect. Awesome. Everyone gets settled in. Yeah, so I want to appreciate, and just to echo the same sentiment, I mean, the conference is certainly has been a great opportunity for everyone to come together, explore new ideas, talk about what the future holds for the industry, talk about some of the work that we've all been doing together in partnership. So certainly really appreciate all of you being out here today, and yesterday, certainly. Now, for today's panel, we're going to be talking through ZK to OTC. And you might hear that and say, where's the connection? And I think the point where we made the connection is, for this panel, we have a variety of different players that are leading on the infrastructure side. We're in the infrastructure space. We have Simply Staking. We have everyone that's been involved in really the foundation of how this ecosystem is developing and getting pushed to the next level of advancement. Now, I'll cut it off right there, and we can go through with a brief round of introductions, and then we can dive deep into the material and start the discussion. So, Guillaume, I want to start with you.
Hi, everyone. Pleasure to be here. So my name is Guillaume Chaumont, CEO and co-founder of Flowdesk. We are a market-making firm operating notably on the market-making-as-a-service model. We've been there for 3 years, and we have 80 people globally between Paris, New York, and Singapore.
Thank you. Pleased to meet you guys. I'm Francesco Cremona. I'm the node operations lead at Simply Staking. We're a blockchain infra provider. We run our own data center and run around 60 protocols, mainnets, and testnets. We've been 4 years running node operations on Chainlink networks across many products of Chainlink. And yeah, we're a blockchain node operator.
Cool. Thanks. My name is Sid Gandhi, co-founder and CEO of Polybase. We're building a privacy L2, so a public blockchain with private transactions. We'll talk a little bit more about it later. We are based in New York City. I'm super excited to be here.
Hey, this is Roshan from Malin. I'm a researcher there. And so we mainly work on a ZK-proof market that allows apps to sort of outsource their ZK-proof computations to us for much faster and much cheaper ZK-proof. So yeah.
Perfect. Yeah, so with that in mind, again, I think what everyone can see is we all have a pretty unique role to play within the broader crypto ecosystem and how, again, the industry is developing. I think given that unique perspective that everyone on the stage can have, a good way to start is to talk a little bit more about, broadly speaking, where do you think the broader or the bigger challenges, or what you could also consider as opportunities, are within the space, at least from your vertical and your perspective? Maybe just start here.
Yeah, sure. I think now we are past the scaling phase, the need for more scaling and more through output on the blockchains, and that's why we're extremely exciting, to see more and more flows being decentralized. We think that the last piece of the puzzle is being built at the moment on the pure trading side, which is decentralized order book, which we are convinced is going to be the ultimate solution. And obviously, we'll have to see how other models like Uniswaps will play into that. But I think, yeah, definitely the key piece of the puzzle is at the moment is decentralizing trading volume, and that will have to happen through order books, which will be fully decentralized to some extent. And obviously, the next piece of the puzzle that we are particularly excited on is all the tokenization part. And obviously, we are seeing it happening with a good velocity, and it's going to take years. But yeah, this is very exciting.
So for many years, many talented developers have been working on a lot of infrastructure in the blockchain space. I feel like now you see the hackathon the past weekend. There are many teams building great dApps, and the next piece of the puzzle is to build proper user experiences so that the wide scale. So we have a wide scale use of all that we're building. We've built for many years a lot of dApps, and now we need to get to the real mass of users and have crypto being used on a wide scale. I think that's what's really important coming up.
Cool, yeah. I guess two things. First, Guillaume, you mentioned scaling is kind of, we're past that. It really helps that the trading volumes are down substantially. Unfortunately, it helps scaling a lot. Maybe that narrative will come back when more people want to trade in DeFi. But I think in terms of infrastructure, it's funny because I almost want to say where infrastructure is going is stop building more infrastructure and build applications that are useful. So I totally agree with that. I think the other funny point is like, if you're building infrastructure and you're having to pay people to use it, you should think about why you're building it. Traditional business models aren't necessarily built that way. I think you have customer acquisition costs, which is important, but that should be a working business model after that. So that's kind of my 2 cents on that.
So from a ZK perspective, it feels like we've kind of like successfully transitioned from like a very long research phase in terms of ZK to actually applying that in, let's say, roll-ups or even end-user applications in that sense, right? So given that the current challenge seems to be how do you scale this model up in terms of like optimizations, how do you make it cheaper and all this stuff? And yeah, I'm really excited to see what people are coming up.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a good conversation to kind of double click into, because I think all of you brought up something to the effect of, the ecosystem is slowed to a degree, at least from an investment perspective. But at the same time, each one of us is continuing to build into the multi-chain space. And we've all heard Sergey talk, and a lot of the team members at Chainlink Labs and other teams talk about a multi-chain future. So I guess one of the questions that we could talk a little bit more deeply on is what is your multi-chain strategy, or what is the outlook on a multi-chain environment? Where do you see a multi-chain future going, and maybe what are the biggest blockers? You mentioned some of the operational constraints that exist, so maybe that's another good one to talk about. So maybe we'll start with Francisco and kind of keep it free-flowing from there.
Cool. So as an operational team that sort of sells a lot of APIs and endpoints and nodes to clients, we are directly impacted by many and many new chains being spawned, because our clients come up to us and ask us like, hey, there's this new chain, new testnet coming up, and we end up with 60+ protocols. They each have a mainnet, multiple testnets, so we have like, it's a constant struggle in our team that we obviously keep on recruiting, we keep on automating work. Like in a multi-chain world, I feel like we can't keep on adding more and more chains, because at the end of the day, behind those developer APIs, behind the front ends are these blockchain nodes which are operating in the back end. It's sometimes a struggle when there are so many different chains to keep up with everything, Discords, communities, GitHub releases, whilst keeping up with the security requirements of all this infrastructure. So that's kind of a thing which we work on a day-to-day basis.
So for quite a long time, the usual approach to like building multi-chain applications has just been to just deploy a copy on another chain. And that's what like Uniswap did. That's what Aave did. That's what pretty much every DeFi protocol does, right? With the rise of like bridges and like CCIP and tech like that, we've seen the rise of like apps that are like truly multi-chain, where there is no single source of truth and that lives on one chain. It's just all connected together and stuff like that, right? So while that's really good in terms of like user experience and all that, it also kind of comes with its own risks in terms of, I presume we all know what happened with multi-chain. There's like billions of dollars in TVL logged in one of like the biggest bridges in our space, just gone, right? So yeah, but it's a really exciting space in terms of like what's going on, like especially in terms of the user experience that you can give, because users don't need to like switch to one chain to use an app. Just use an app on the chain that you're already in, right? Feels like we're kind of like barreling towards a multi-chain future without really considering what that does to an applications like source of truth and data models and all of that. But yeah, hopefully I'm really excited about CCIP and like what they're doing to solve all this.
Maybe I'll just put an end user perspective on this, right? So I think like most non-degen end users of crypto, of which there aren't too many, but they're there. They don't really care what chain they're on. And so I'll give you like a very simple use case, right? If you're in a country that doesn't have a stable banking system and you have volatile currency, stable coins are amazing for you, but you don't necessarily care what chain you're on. And so yeah, multi-chain is great. I think bridges are great. They'll get secure over time. We'll solve some of those challenges, maybe with ZK bridges, for example. But I think the key thing to keep in mind is like the end user adoption of crypto isn't really based on one chain. It's going to be based on an application that people genuinely find value from and want to use. Whether it's a consumer application, like I mentioned, business application for cross-border, trade finance settlements, whatever it may be.
On the trading side, it's I mean the short answer is Web2 is easy to integrate and Web3 is still quite complex, and that's why we are taking a bit of a counterintuitive approach, which is that whenever it comes to integrating with centralized venues, it's very easy, it's cheap, you can do it fast. We run on 100 exchanges at the moment, and on the Web3 side, we are much more selective. Because it's more complex. It's not just integrating a 5 method of an API. It's, there is the whole signing process that you need to figure out and a whole bunch of stuff. And so that's why on our side we are still making like very selective bets and focusing, on the top tier ecosystem, considering also that moving funds across the chain is still a pain in the ass. Let's be very honest, and that's why. We rely still on our side on using third parties, exchanges notably, to transfer funds from one chain to another and so on and so forth. And we're still waiting for that bridge that will be secured, efficient, and painless. And I think it's coming, but we don't have it yet.
Yeah. Hopefully that's CCIP.
Yeah.
I know we all talked about that a lot, so that's good further validation. I think it's interesting though, because the way that we've approached it, and again, you've heard this talked about a lot, is thousands of networks, thousands of chains, people operating in their own chain, whether it be a bank chain or a public chain, each bringing some value add to the ecosystem and then being connected by something like CCIP to ensure that we can build the best applications possible. As we work towards that as a potential eventuality, I guess one of the questions would be, do you see a multi-chain world that is thousands of networks? What is kind of the bar that you would set conceptually? And as you go through, and I think you made a great point there, which is you have to be selective right now. Just again, any constraints that exist from a development perspective, and also as you evaluate risk and what's available from a cross-chain perspective. So, two questions. One would be, again, do you see the future being certainly multi-chain, but to what extent? If there's any insights that we can add in there, and then at the same time, in lieu of having, and I mean, Francisco, you're on 60-something chains right now, so you're doing pretty well scaling. But as we talk through that a bit more, what is your kind of selection criteria as you think about where to be today versus tomorrow? Maybe we'll start with
I think there are two options. The first one is we only look at this from a pure technical side, and then the answer is probably there won't be too many chains because it's going to be down, to the trilemma, performance, decentralization, and we'll have like specific chains for specific level of security and performances. So that's the first approach. Maybe we have 5, 10, 15, 20, even 100 chains, all EVM compatible or not. We'll see. And then there is the other answer, which is chains for specific use cases, specific businesses, like it is right now on the exchange side. On the centralized side, you have exchange in Europe, you have exchanges in Japan, and this is very linked down to either like local jurisdiction or specific business or specific type of token. And I think right now it's a bit unclear, and that's partially why we're not making too many bets on the fraudulent side. And I think as this clear out, we will have the answer of, is it going to be 50 chains or millions? Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I have 2 points about this. So with regards to the number of chains, there are different ideologies right now about how chains should operate. We have a background in Cosmos and substrate ecosystems as well, and in those ecosystems they work with specific app chain, like use case specific app chains generally. So with that methodology, it would mean that every single app chain would have one specific use case, and that would result in like thousands of potential chains, and then with a core bridging tech that connects them all. Or else, if the other ideology, which is the general purpose EVM, just like Ethereum, Arbitrum, like all the L2s, that would result, if that ideology wins, it would result in much less chains out there. Now, on the second point, one thing which would heavily facilitate, so back to the topic of CCIP, one thing that CCIP brings to sort of solving the problem of all these chains out there is that the operators that are currently running CCIP and even the dev teams that are building CCIP have had years of experience at the moment. Like Chainlink has been running on many, like 15 plus chains for years now. So they're pretty much native to a multi-chain environment already. So I feel like a protocol like CCIP is somewhat ready, like it's built from the ground up to be to operate in such an environment. So I'm looking forward to this future.
Yeah.
Maybe from an institutional perspective, I recently talked to the head of blockchain at JP Morgan that's building the Onyx platform and the head of blockchain at Citibank. Just a couple weeks ago, they released their tokenized assets platform. They're using permission chains today, I believe. Onyx forked Ethereum, and then I think Citi's using Hyperledger, one of those providers. And what they kind of said was that, look, like we don't want to use permission chains, right? Like we understand that they're not decentralized and basically are just bad databases. We get that. But we can't build something today on public networks just because of regulation. But they want to prepare themselves for that future. And if that future actually happens, yes, I think we're going to have a lot of chains because at least every bank is going to want to control their own blockchain. And then you may have kind of additional financial services companies that also want to host their own blockchains and connect those eventually into the public sphere using bridges, using interconnection platforms. So I do think there's going to be a lot of blockchains. I do think anyone that has money to control is going to want to control the platform on which that money is ledgered and stored. So you're going to have some level of like controlled blockchains, maybe not fully permissioned and maybe not fully public and permissionless. So probably settle somewhere between there and just basically be the next kind of databases as we have them today. And so you can, like all of your accounts at Chase or JP Morgan are just stored in an Oracle database probably somewhere. Changing that into a blockchain network and then adding some permissions on top seems to be getting a lot of the benefits that we want from crypto and blockchain, but letting these large providers actually use them in a way that works under regulation, risk management, and things like that they care about.
I think I would echo Francesco in that it almost seems like the multi-chain future and sort of like the app chain modular future is almost like an inevitability. Like simply because of group dynamics here. I mean, even if half the people don't believe in that sort of thesis, fine, they're just gonna go build apps on Ethereum. But you have like a significant contingent who does believe in like the app chain and multi-chain thesis, right? They obviously are going to go out and build their own app chains, and you obviously are going to need a bridge between them. I mean, you can't just tell them we want to interoperate with you, right? So you obviously are going to need a bridge to do bridges with them, and yeah. Seems like the multi-chain future is kind of an inevitability at this point, honestly.
So that's good to hear. So one of the things that came up a couple times in our conversations before this panel was ZK. So certainly ZK to OTC on the panel here, but with the growth and rollout of additional ZK rollups using ZK proofs. How does that change the landscape, bring more utility, increase the complexity of maybe a multi-chain app as it could exist? How does that change things going forward, and what is kind of the next level of evolution with ZKs in mind? So maybe, Sean, we can start with you. I know you've been involved, and maybe go from Sid from there.
It seems like there are a lot of teams who are working on like ZK bridges, basically, proving that, proving literally all the state transitions from one chain on another chain, and sort of making it so you don't need to like trust somebody in between to function as your bridge. You can sort of just prove everything from the other chain onto like, let's say, Ethereum or some other anchor chain, and sort of like go from there. Right? So seems like ZK Tech is like on the path towards solving a lot of at least like the security issues that we see in bridges and all of that. So yeah, I think really excited to see like how that shapes up.
Yeah, I think from a ZK blockchain perspective, I think we're starting to see some of the ZK scaling solutions come live, ZK Sync, Polygon Zero, and others. It's funny though, because the whole generation of chains coming online right now for using ZK were built for scalability. And as we kind of talked, maybe that's not the talk of the town right now, and it's not as necessary. And so, but one of the things I've been kind of sad about is to not have seen as many ZK privacy-related solutions. So ZK is an amazing technology that lets you solve data privacy trade-offs in a way that just wasn't possible before the invention of that cryptography. And very, very few companies in the space are working on that right now. Obviously, Polybase, we're building a ZK L2 for privacy. There's, of course, Alio that's been researching and building for a few years, and Aztec as well, that's launched a couple things in the space. But neither from those have actually made it to mainnet in something that's usable over a long period of time. And I want to see more of that, right? Like, I think maybe just to step back and explain what trade-off I'm talking about. So you have privacy, and then you have the need to verify things. And so all the past iterations of blockchains basically said in order to verify things, all of the data has to be public, so we can all see what's going on and validate that everything that all the other validators are doing on the network is correct. Zero-knowledge cryptography changes that equation by saying we don't actually need to know all the underlying data that these transactions are made out of in order to verify them. We can verify something called a proof that basically shows that each transaction is valid according to the rules of the system. And that's the only thing we need to see. And so that preserves privacy. We don't have general purpose production systems that are live using that yet. We have a couple narrow kind of implementations that have been really successful. So Zcash is one of them. I think last time we checked, it's about 500 million in TVL still on Zcash. Might be surprising given how old it is, but it's still fairly used. That was a kind of very narrow implementation of some of the early ZK technology. But now we have the capability and the performance in ZK to go more general purpose. So I'm super excited about that.
Yeah, I could not agree more with you on the privacy side. And I think we're still missing, that fully decentralized OTC stack, fully private. Does it need to be fully decentralized? Maybe not. The bidding process can be off-chain, and then we trust the centralized counterparty behind. Obviously, there is everything around the dark pools, which is very exciting. Back to order books, fully decentralized, anonymous order books. And then the question is, how is the liquidity splitted among the people providing liquidity? Is it first in, first out? Is it evenly spread? So I think there is a lot to build, but again, the technology is there, so it's probably just a matter of time.
Yeah, I think we actually have all the building blocks to build like proper ZK dark pools right now. It's just a lot of the systems aren't like audited fully yet. I think that's coming over the next like 3 to 6 months. We're going to see some of these projects get audited. I think the real question after that is going to be compliance.
The regulatory.
And regulatory, because there's a lot of things you can't prove. For example, like total like outstanding volume in an order book. Like you can't prove that in a ZK world. Maybe there's things that will happen that will allow you to eventually prove that. But again, it's like there's this trade-off now between like privacy and like regulation. And I kind of, in our talk yesterday, I was actually talking about how a lot of ZK mechanisms solve that as well. Because at the end of the day, what regulation is about is viewing some part of the state of the system and making sure it aligns with the rules and laws that we've agreed on as a society. So it's kind of like what validators do today, but at like this macro level, right? So you need some of the same mechanisms. Yeah, super excited for those projects to come online and solve that.
Awesome. Francisco,
I think privacy is pretty core to any widespread use of crypto in general. So tech like ZK privacy is definitely needed, like Polybase, Aleo. I think these projects are pretty important.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's along the same lines of the conversation we were just having around, and it is a common theme in the conversation here, which is the banking side of the equation. There's certain information, certainly if they were operating on a public blockchain, that they would not want to be as prominent and accessible as they could achieve right now in a private network, let's say. Now, with that in mind, in one of the areas in which regulation seems to have not, halted growth as much is in the RWA space. So RWAs are, as we've all seen, have grown pretty substantially over the last, even over this last quarter. I mean, at the beginning of Q2, if I'm not mistaken, we were somewhere around 300 million in value locked within the RWA space. Now that's over 1.4 billion, as of this month. So with that in mind, what do you think is fueling RWA's their growth, and why is it having such outsized growth in comparison to the rest of the market, or is it just a broader recognition of this kind of bridging of the two worlds? And maybe we'll start with Ilmian.
Sure. So for me, it feels a lot like 2016, 2017 in crypto. Like at that time, we had like a $25 billion market cap. So obviously now it's significantly lower, but we have nothing, but we have everything. It's already there. We can access and tap the yield on chain, get those 3.5% on euro, 5% plus on the US dollar, even more if you look at tokenized ETF on corporate bonds. So I think the big driver is going to be actually the retail, because we have this massive amount of people, dozens of billions of dollars in stable coins, which are basically sitting, doing nothing from all the retail markets. All of us, and obviously it's going to be significantly higher in the next bull run, we're sitting and doing nothing. And getting those 4, 5, 6% is already massive, arguably even more with what you can get with your current bank today. Today, you just use your credit card, you get those stable coins, and boom, you get 8, 9% from US corp bonds. So I think, and that might be the first real use case, mass use case of crypto. Because if you can get 9% almost risk-free on the US dollar, we're talking about hundreds of billions of dollars. And I think that's probably what's going to drive the growth for the next cycle.
That's good feedback. I mean, I want to continue on, but I think it also goes to Sid, your earlier point, which was, when people talk about, the retail and what they care about and what they focus on, what they're primarily concerned on. Your point being that, they want an app that's going to deliver real value to them. Right. They want to ensure certainly that the back end is as secure as possible, as functional as possible, but at the end of the day, they need to see that real world value being delivered, to them directly. Yeah. So to Film's point, I mean, would you agree that that's, probably one of the fuelers?
Yeah, I mean, I think, either make people money, save people money, or save people time, right? Like kind of classic 3 ways to build a business. You kind of mentioned interest rates as some of the driving factors of RWA. I'm actually kind of afraid, I think interest rates were okay right now and maybe for the next year, but I'm actually kind of afraid when those go back down, all the treasuries coming online, which is the bulk of the 1.4 billion, I've heard 600 million as well, that demand is going to kind of go away. So we're going to have to figure out what else people want to bring on chain. But I think the exercise and the movements we're running through right now in terms of like the legal agreements that are helping to tokenize these things, the actual tokenization providers, people are starting to discover that there's these things called like depository trusts that like actually hold the assets for you. It's not even the company that's like doing legal agreements. So there's also like financial plumbing that's like kind of sorting itself out, so that when we want to bring the next assets on chain, it's going to be much, much easier. So that's super exciting. But I think the other kind of funny thing is like we already actually had massive adoption of RWAs before this last boom in treasuries, which is stable coins. 65 billion or so last time I checked. I actually think that's amazing. That's like awesome product market fit. I think outside of the US, like I was kind of mentioning, stable currency is hard to come by. USD, right? Like the actual physical currency is really hard to come by because a lot of central banks in developing nations kind of hoard that to use for trade. So having like businesses having access to that to trade with other businesses is a really big deal. And being able to grab USDC from exchanges is quite amazing. And so, yeah, I think like RWA is massive. A little afraid we might have a dip after interest rates run their course. But I think, yeah, the plumbing is super important.
Yeah, do you think that's universal, or do you think in those underserved markets where you can't get access to these traditional assets for yield, do you think that demand still continues to grow pretty steadily despite what happens with interest rates?
Yeah, it could be because like there's a lot of markets where you can't get access to these US-based securities, so that's always going to be there. I think even at a 2-3% risk-free rate, like other countries might still like there'd be some portion of funds that are invested in that. But I think in terms of like like the massive growth that we all want to see, yeah, it could be other things as well. I think like tokenized bonds, I guess treasuries are bonds as well, but like corporate bonds is really interesting. I think as those things can't be easily accessed outside the US at all. and provide really great exposure for a lot of investors in other countries.
Yeah. So I think for me, it's a lot about the ease of access in which you can get access to these instruments, right? So today, if you ask me, how do I go and buy a US Treasury bond, I wouldn't be able to tell you. If it's anything like my home country, it's like go sign up on a website. There's a literal auction for buying a bond, at least in my home country. You can't just go and buy something, right? So the ease of access that way, let's say I can just go and buy US Treasury bond today, like really is the killer application for me when it comes to like RWAs. Yeah.
I think real world assets, such as the stable coins, have always been the killer application for the past few years on blockchain. Like, I think even companies in the US and Europe have relied, a bunch of companies have relied on stable coins to operate because their banking partners just fell out on them and stopped working. So a lot of companies are already relying on real world assets on the blockchain.
Yeah, fair point. Okay, so I know we're a little bit tight on time, so why don't we do this? I mean, with the couple minutes that we do have left, what's next for each of your teams? What's going to help, and for this group here, what can they do to get access to your teams? What's on the horizon, and what's, again, from your perspective, pushing that industry forward? Maybe we'll start here.
Sure. Yeah. So for us, it's very simple. We deliver market making for token issuers. We work almost exclusively with token issuers. We think transparency is very important, and that's why we deliver analytics and all these product lines. So I think we are looking to help the token issuers who are indeed for more liquidity, who are looking to control more their liquidity, considering that the next 12 to 18 months are going to be very difficult. I think, of course, that doesn't prevent us from being very enthusiastic because of all the tech we just talked about. But yeah, my message is I think the next months will be very difficult from an interest rate environment perspective, venture capital perspective, crypto perspective, and we should have the responsibility to say it and acknowledge it. Yeah.
So from my end, we're a full tech infrastructure and dev team. So if anyone has any projects that are going out public, have a front end, need API endpoints, need sequencers, need validators on their chains, we do development, infrastructure work, and tooling, anything that's required to go to the real world with your project. So yeah, that's what Simply Staking does. And if you need us, reach out.
Cool, yeah. So Polybase is building a privacy L2. The first thing that we're releasing in testnet in 2 months is private USDC transactions. So far today, if you want to send someone USDC, whether you're a consumer or a business, it has to be done publicly. That's obviously a problem when you think about things people want to do on chain, including payroll, lending, trade finance to your suppliers or vendors. That stuff needs to be public. That stuff needs to be private. And so we're going to be enabling that in 2 months for testnet and for, first quarter next year for mainnet. So if you have use cases around that, always happy to chat and really happy to be up here with you guys.
So at Malin, we are building a verifiable compute infrastructure and a ZK-proof market. So if you guys are building apps that need ZK proofs, or if you're running any compute infrastructure of your own, like let's say servers or something, you can come to us. We'll help you decentralize that part of your infrastructure. Yeah.
Perfect. Well, I appreciate everyone here. Again, I hope everyone has enjoyed SmartCon so far. We do have some events tonight, which I'm sure we'll talk a little bit more about in a moment here. But again, appreciate everyone coming out. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.